Hey guys, welcome to episode 15 of Spicy Licks. If you are new here, my name is Ross Campbell from bulletproofguitarplayer.com. Welcome to my channel. And the format of this Spicy Licks series that I've been doing here on YouTube for a few years now is basically I take a lick that I've either learned from another player or written myself. I take you through it note for note with tab and notation on screen. And then after that, for those who are interested, I like to break down the theory behind it so that if you have an understanding of fundamental music theory, then you can take that information, apply it to your own playing, and then that way come up with similar sounding licks and ideas of your own. So today's lick that I'm teaching you is one that I wrote myself, but it was heavily inspired by the opening riff to Electric Gypsy by Andy Timmons, which is what you heard me play at the start of the video. Now, before we get into learning the lick and talking more about it, let's just listen to it a couple more times, once to tempo and then slowed down, and I'm going to put the tab and notation on screen for you to follow along with at home. So if you're familiar with Electric Gypsy by Andy Timmons, it opens up like this. And what's happening there is Andy is playing through the first two chords in the progression of the tune. Now I'm playing this a half step up from the original, so that means I'm playing it in the key of D major, and the progression is a 1, 5, 6, 4 in D major, which means the chords D major to A major to B minor to G major. And Andy's riff, it opens like this, as I just played. So this is what he's playing over the D major chord. And then he moves to the A major chord to play this. And in both examples there, what he's doing is he's playing the root of the chord as an open string. So obviously the D string for the D major chord. And then he's sliding into the major third of that chord on the next string along. So as a fretted note on the G string. Sliding into fret 11 on the G, which is the note F sharp. That's the major third in a D major triad. Root, third, fifth, that's the major third right there. And he's playing the root, of course, with the open D string. He's playing a phrase that is based on covering the root of the chord with the open D string and then sliding into that major third on the G string. And he does a very similar thing for the A major chord. So again, he's covering the root of the A major chord with the open A string, but then also sliding into the major third, which is the note C sharp at fret 11 on the D string. So it's a very creative and clever way of playing through those chords. Now, this lick that I've come up with was obviously very inspired by that opening to the riff, because the lick starts out like this. So what I'm doing there is, obviously I'm starting on the D major chord with the open D string, but then sliding into the beginning of a phrase that starts with that major third of the D major chord. So all the way through me playing those fretted notes on the G and B strings, you want to keep that open D string ringing out as a sort of droning effect that's very similar to the way that Andy Timmons opens Electric Gypsy. And then I slide into the major third of the A major chord like so. So that's how we're starting that lick. We're using the open D and A strings to cover the root notes in the D major and A major chords, but then also fretting the major thirds on strings that are across from them. Now, the next part of the lick goes like this. So I'm picking that open A string, which we've actually already done, sliding into that major third on the D string at the same time. Performing a little grace note trill there at fret 11 and 12 on the D string. Sliding up and then back down to fret 11 and then pulling off to 9. And then beginning this sort of ascending run. Now, these notes here, particularly these three notes, that part of the lick I'm kind of basing around this, which is a B minor triad. Now, we haven't reached the B minor chord at this point in the progression just yet. We're still on the A major, but you can sort of think of this series of notes as a sort of foreshadowing for that B minor that you know is about to come. So I'll just play from the start of the lick up until the point we're at now. After that, we're going to slide up to fret 14 on the B string and play something that we've already played, but an octave higher. So that right there, that's very similar to what we played down here, an octave lower. So let's connect those two parts together. So again, we're sliding into that note there, which is the major third of the A major chord, and performing a little grace note trill slide thing, pulling off to fret 12 on the B string. And again, that's very similar to what we did down here. Then after that, we move up. So we move up to fret 15 on the B. Perform a hammer on from 12 to 14 on the high E string. Then we're going to slide all the way from 14 up to 19 and bend that up by a whole step. So this is the target note that we want to reach with the bend. So we're going to play that hammer on from 12 to 14 on the high E and then slide into that note at fret 19 and bend it up a whole step. So let's piece that together with the rest of the lick. And that's the lick in full. So what can we take away from that? What can we learn from that? Well, you know, the most notable thing, what we went over at the start of it, is the combination of covering the root notes in the first two major chords, the D major and the A major, covering those notes with the open strings, whilst also playing the major thirds of those chords as fretted notes on strings that are opposite to them. And sort of building melodic phrases around those major thirds with fretted notes and using those open strings to kind of drone out. I really like how Andy has used open strings at the start of that Electric Gypsy riff, and I like using them in this lick as well, because when I think about using open strings in guitar licks, the genre that comes to mind for me is country guitar playing. You know, Brad Paisley, Brent Mason, Johnny Highland, these are all guys that are incredible, phenomenal country guitar players that use a lot of open strings in their licks, but in a very sort of twangy, almost percussive way at times. And that's not at all, you know, what comes to mind when I play a lick like this. Yes, we're combining open strings and fretted notes, which is something that country players do, but it doesn't sound country at all. So it just goes to show that, you know, open strings doesn't equal, you know, country twang influences. You can use open strings in combination with fretted notes to great effect in melodic rock tracks like this one. Another thing that you can take away from this lick in particular is the use of, you know, repeated phrases in different octaves. Like I said before, this down here was repeated up here essentially. So that's something that you can do to develop your licks, is take part of them and repeat them in different octaves and maybe play a few notes in between to sort of connect that repetition. And one last thing I would like to mention about that bend in particular is that I'm bending up to the 9th of B, which is the note C sharp, and that's being played over that B minor chord. And playing ninths over minor chords always sounds really nice and melodic, so that's why that sounds so good at that point in the lick. So that is going to do it for today's episode of Spicy Licks. I hope that you enjoyed this one, and if you are a member at bulletproofguitarplayer.com, you have instant access to the bonus content for this free YouTube lesson, which includes the backing track and 3 bonus lick lessons played over the Electric Gypsy backing track that, like this one, are designed to follow the chord changes. So these are great licks to learn for getting used to highlighting chord changes in major progressions. So you can check that out at bulletproofguitarplayer.com. Of course, you get the tab files for everything played in this video and those bonus lessons as well. If you're interested in signing up, the link to do so is in the description box below. It gives you access to everything on the site. That includes parts 1 and 2 of Bulletproof Guitar Player, my original guitar courses, as well as all of the bonus content that I make for these free YouTube lessons. And that's going to do it for today's video, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.